Yes, because we can't really do for anybody else if we can't do for ourselves. If empathy gets this rap for being all about feelings, I feel what you feel, but that's not what it is. Empathy and judgment cannot exist in the same space ever, and it doesn't matter if it's empathy or self-empathy. You really can't break a habit, you have to replace it.
Welcome to the Future Walk podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Draper, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Melissa Robinson-Winemiller. She's a TEDx speaker, a leadership coach, and an author who's changing the way we think about empathy, emotional intelligence, and the role of humanity in leadership. She has spoken at Oxford, Cambridge, and Columbia, and her work has been featured in dozens of publications and podcasts. She's best known for her TEDx talk, Shattering Shame with Self-Empathy, her podcast and YouTube channel, The Empathic Leader, and her #1 best-selling book of the same name. Melissa's developed the 5R Reset, which is a framework for building self-empathy that's helped thousands of leaders stop judging themselves and start leading with clarity and compassion. And she argues that empathy isn't a soft skill. It's a critical skill. And she's proven that it's not just about feelings. It's a tool that drives innovation, productivity, and profit. I'm excited to explore her story, the 5R Reset, and why self-empathy is the foundation for everything else. Melissa, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Sarah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, especially since we talk about a lot of the same things. So this is going to be a good conversation.
It sure is. I agree. I mean, there's so many great connection points between our work and between, I think, some of our philosophy about taking care of yourself, right? How important, how necessary, absolutely critical that is for leaders to do first, and how deserving we are as human beings of that same thing.
Yes, because we can't really do for anybody else if we can't do for ourselves. It's that whole pouring from an empty cup. I know it's cliche, but it's true.
I know. It's absolutely that one, and the oxygen masks, and just so many other things that really resonate with us. And we kind of nod along when we hear them. Yet for some reason that self-care ends up taking that back burner. I wonder why that is.
I don't know. I mean, especially when you're dealing with empathy and compassion, I think those are the kind of people that want to do for others, that, have that desire to connect. And unfortunately, sometimes that takes over the need to take care of ourselves. You've got to connect with yourself first.
Yeah.
Charity begins at home.
Oh, beautiful. I love that. Thank you. Yeah. Charity does begin at home in you, and then extends out from there. So,
yeah.
Well, I really, really got a lot out at many different levels from your TEDx talk. And in it, you share a really significant story about something that's happened in your life and kind of how you got to where you are now and what you're doing now. Would you be willing to share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a professional musician. That's what I did. I played French horn. I got to travel. I mean, my dad was enlisted military and my mom was a housewife. So the fact that I had the opportunities to travel and to play with people like Ray Charles and Mannheim Steamroller and Manhattan Transfer and going solo in Italy, these aren't opportunities I would have had otherwise.
Wow.
So, music really opened a whole world to me that I had no idea about. But being a performing musician, especially on French horn, classical musician isn't always very stable. And I like food, shelter, and clothing. I think they're great. So I did go and get my first doctorate, and I went to teach to be a professor of French horn. But unfortunately, within my very first term there, I was assaulted by one of my colleagues, which was bad enough, but then it got worse because of the leadership that was there. They didn't want to know. They didn't want to hear about it. They really didn't care. I ended up being kind of a scapegoat for a lot of things. When I went to the head of my department, I was told that if I was stirring up trouble as a junior female faculty member right away, that I might as well kiss promotion goodbye, which I hadn't even been there a whole semester. I really
Oh
didn't
my
care
goodness.
about promotion.
Mhm.
And then when I went to his boss, I was told if I didn't like it, I could just leave, which
Wow.
how many French horn professorships are there? It's
Right.
not like, that option was there. And so it actually, I actually stuck it out for 6 years.
Oh,
And by
wow.
the end of that, my career was just destroyed. It was just done. So I came towards the Midwest, and um, then COVID hit, and the arts really took a big hit. And that
Mhm.
was kind of the end of that. So at that point, I was doing some consulting with my husband, and we were going into these smaller healthcare things, pain clinics, surgery centers, that kind of thing. And we would revamp them kind of from the bottom up, whether it was supply chain or medical stuff, or I tend to take care of HR and data analytics and that kind of thing. But I kept seeing the same problems with the leadership over and over and over again, with an inability to connect with others that a lot of times seem to go hand in hand with an inability to connect with themselves.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I was like, okay, what is this? This is a pattern. This keeps coming up. This seems to be something in human nature. What is it?
Mhm.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to go back to what I know. And I started my second doctorate in interdisciplinary leadership. And I'm
Wow.
almost finished with it now. I'm hoping to
Great.
be done in August.
Wow.
But my dissertation focus is empathy and leadership, because I
Mm.
feel that strongly about it. That not only is this something that we're missing societally,
Yeah.
but also in leadership, and
Mhm.
especially with the advent of AI that has no empathy or
Mhm.
emotional intelligence or feelings, that
Mhm.
this is something we really need to get right.
Wow. Thank you. Why? First of all, congratulations on that, your second doctorate that you're about to have completed. And empathy, can you say that again? Empathy in leadership is the overarching, but what's it? What's the title of it again?
Well, the doctoral program is in interdisciplinary leadership. So it's not like
Interdisciplinary.
healthcare leadership or nonprofit leadership, or it's all of them.
Right.
So yeah,
Okay. And that's it. Well, what you recognize is, right, that common pattern you were seeing, that when leaders, the inability to connect with others was they saw the same leaders with that same inability to connect to themselves.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
More often than not, you know, not always, but more often than not, they were missing that piece to be able to connect with themselves first and foremost. So if you don't know how to do it for yourself, how are you ever going to figure out how to do it for anybody else?
Right. Right.
You know?
So why is that important? I mean, why does a leader need to be able to connect with others? We're going to get to themselves, but like, what is the bottom line of that?
Well, so empathy, I'll just go right down the tunnel here.
Please
So
do.
empathy gets this rap for being all about feelings. I
Mhm.
feel what you feel, but that's not what it is. There's
Mhm.
actually like 43 different definitions of empathy. And I feel what you feel is one. That's one way to do it. But really what empathy is about is taking the perspective of the other person. And
Mhm.
sometimes there's no feelings involved. You can use what's called cognitive empathy, which is I logically understand what you're feeling, your situation, what you're thinking,
Mhm.
but I don't feel anything.
Mhm.
And a part of this as well is self empathy, actually understanding your perspective in that why am I doing the things I'm doing? Why am I repeating these same patterns that are unhealthy? Why am I continuing to take on these leadership things that aren't working for either me or my people?
Mhm.
So it's really all about that perspective taking. And that's the piece that people miss.
That perspective taking. I love it.
Mhm.
I'm just thinking what I took a course some time ago. It was a great course. It was on essentially conflict resolution. It was part of a business like communication certificate.
Mhm.
And I think it was, I believe it was in that course. We learned this idea of empathy light. And so as you're talking about this, it was a much more broad framing, and
Mhm.
I don't remember if it came from the book Difficult Conversations, as there was something the professor had kind of developed himself. But under that very high, not 43 types, but like just big empathy. And then, but sometimes you can't quite get there because you can't quite feel what another person's feeling, or you can't quite imagine even what that other person's going through.
Yeah.
But the idea is like empathy light is you can still recognize as a human being that there's something there for them. Something might be difficult. You still, and that sounds more like the cognitive side. Is that Is that what the cognitive side is? You
Yeah.
recognize, you may not feel it yourself, but you can at least appreciate something in someone else.
Absolutely. And in fact, I talk to leaders about, using the cognitive empathy, because if you're taking on everybody's feelings and everybody's emotions and everybody's baggage, that's how you end up with empathy fatigue. And
Ah,
that's a problem because we have so much burnout in leadership as it is. We
yes.
don't need another reason to burn them out. And the other thing is with empathy, you don't have to actually understand the situation.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to understand the outcome. I know what it is to feel sad. I know what it is to grieve. I know what it is to understand, I'm scared because I don't know if I'm going to make rent at the end of the week.
Mm-hmm.
So that may not be the exact situation that the other person is going through, but I understand the result.
Mm-hmm.
So, you don't necessarily have to connect on a granular level to be able to connect. I like that they call it empathy light because it's a high level kind of thing. And if you're a leader and you're dealing with hundreds of people, that's kind of what you have to rely on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I used to use it when I taught at a program the FBI runs for law enforcement leaders from around the globe, and I taught leaders like wellness for leaders, and one of our blocks was on conflict,
Uh-huh.
and it includes difficult conversations. It includes empathy, and I would use it as that framing because I think it really like would help people understand, because I do believe there's a misunderstanding of empathy, even beyond what you talked about, that it's just emotional or air quote soft,
Yeah.
that it's that, you have to actually feel what someone else is feeling. And if you can't feel that, then how am I supposed to ever be empathetic? But there's this other level of just, again, that appreciation for what someone is going through, or as you said, the result,
Yeah.
the outcome. Hmm.
Yeah. Absolutely. And in fact, I would actually say it's the best place to start because, like I
Yeah.
said, if you're taking on all sorts of emotional baggage,
Yep.
sometimes it's hard to see clearly.
Hmm.
And if I have a leader, I want someone who's going to be able to lead and see clearly. I don't want someone who's going to end up so caught up in whatever it is that they're going to go to pieces, you know? I really
Yes,
don't.
absolutely. I know, absolutely. You still need someone who can have that clarity, who can have that ability to make those decisions and
Yeah.
communicate, drive forward, and all those other things. So
Yeah.
this brings to mind for me compassion.
Yes.
Now, you've said empathy leads to compassion, and I want to get to that because for me, the reason compassion comes up is when I was also back in the FBI, I was part of an employee assistance program, and one thing like in the caregiving role, or in a role of like a peer, right, we talk about compassion fatigue, so similar to empathy fatigue, I believe, right? and,
Yeah.
and you have to guard against that and take care of yourself. Back to that thing, you got to take care of yourself first. Here we
Yes.
are right
Yeah.
now. Like, you got to take care of yourself and make sure you're doing that so you can continue to serve others. So,
Yeah.
but all right, so how does empathy lead to compassion? I mean, that's a bridge you explained or drew out in the TEDx talk.
Yeah. So this is actually a fantastic question because people they just kind of put empathy, sympathy, and compassion in this huge ball. But
Right.
there's three different things that do three different things.
Yeah.
So, if you don't really understand how it works, it's easy to get them mixed up. So empathy, even though I talk about, making it actionable and doing stuff with it, it really at its base, empathy is completely passive. You are taking the other person's point of view. You are looking at their perspective, but you're not doing anything. There's no action involved at all. Compassion is the action. Compassion is
Mm.
what you do with that empathy. And I think it's really important that you have to have empathy first. Otherwise, you could end up with misguided compassion, which can be just as destructive, if not more so. I mean, you think about, well, one example is like in the 80s and 90s, right? How as a country, we were giving tons of money and supplies and resources to
Mhm.
Africa because of the starving and the stuff that was going on there, right?
Mhm.
Very compassionate. We were taking action, but we
Mhm.
didn't have the empathy to take their perspective first, which is
Mhm.
why a lot of those resources ended up going to dictators or never actually made it to the people.
Mhm.
We were taking the action. We were doing great things, but we hadn't taken the perspective first. So we ended up with a misguided compassion, which didn't have the impact it could have.
Holy, yeah, fascinating. I see this play out all the time. I mean, you could get to what happens when people are online or they hear what on site, or you read a news article that maybe you just pull out the things. Maybe it is a very fair and balanced, but you just pull out the things that already resonate with maybe your existing belief system or whatnot. I see that play out quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't even realize we're doing it because we don't necessarily realize the difference. But there is a difference between empathy and compassion.
Okay. And what's sympathy then?
So empathy is when you take the other person's perspective through their eyes. So you're trying to understand their situation through their experience. Sympathy is when you look at their experience through your own eyes, which means you're bringing along your baggage, you're bringing along your opinions, and you probably don't even mean to do it. We don't mean to do it, but humans are biased. We just are. That's psychologically, it happens and we don't even know it. So unfortunately, what happens is you end up comparing your situation to their situation. And as soon as you have two, and that comparison is there, you have judgment. This is better than that. This is worse than that. And empathy and judgment cannot exist in the same space ever. And it doesn't matter if it's empathy or self-empathy. They just can't. So that's why a lot of healthcare professionals are actually trained not to use sympathy, because there is that negative, pity, judgmental kind of thing. Better you than me, whatever. Because if you're with a patient and they're there on what's potentially the worst day of their life, the last thing they want is someone coming at them with pity and judgment, even if it's with the best of intentions.
Right. Is there a place for sympathy then?
I don't think there's any place for sympathy that empathy would do better.
Oh, okay, that's good. So with empathy, no judgment.
No, you can't.
They cannot coexist.
Nope. If you're feeling judgment, that's a big cue that you're not feeling empathy.
So let's talk about self-empathy then, because that seems to be that is where this is going. Yeah. Self-empathy cannot exist with self-judgment.
Nope. And that's how you know. If you're trying to work towards, so there's 4 steps to self-empathy.
Okay.
So if you're working towards, trying to get self-empathy and you feel this judgment, that's automatically how you know you're not going there. How could I have been so stupid? Gee, I'm such a bonehead. I should have known better. Well, so-and-so did it. And I'm going to be judgy about their actions or their thoughts at this point. So 4 steps. First one, self-observation. You need to step back and you need to pay attention to whatever the situation is. But your goal is to be critical, not caring, which means that I want you to approach it like a computer. I'm looking for patterns. I'm looking for data. I'm looking for, big overarching themes, but I'm not attaching emotion. When you're working on a spreadsheet on your computer, it does not attach emotion. It does not care how badly you've got your checkbook messed up. It's just, this is the data. This is what I'm looking for. I'm trying to understand. That's it.
Can I pause there and talk more about self-observation before we get to step 2?
Sure.
Okay. That's really tough. That critical piece of not caring. And I'm just thinking my own kind of growth journey. I've been doing mindfulness meditation for, I don't even know how many years now, probably 8 now. And that's been a huge piece for me. Like in the process of meditating, like non-judgmental, just awareness, taking the step back. I mean, there are these themes that these words of that process. Yeah. And I've gotten a lot better, but I still do find those moments where, I'm critical, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in an unhealthy way, right? In a in that self-observational thing. I'm not critical like that neutral computer. I'm more like invested, and it's, it's hard in the moment. Just, I don't know what your strategies are to train that.
Well, I mean, first of all, you're getting better at it because you're practicing it. Yeah. And that's the first step is, just expecting it to happen is not going to happen. You have to actually practice it. The second thing I've actually found is to write it down. Okay. Look for the words, because you'll put things in writing without thinking that maybe you won't even notice. And I mean, if you want to be super tech about it, throw it into AI. Hey, AI, which words in here are showing emotion? Which words are maybe saying I'm being more critical than I should be? What are
Yeah.
you picking up? I mean, I think it would be better if you show it to another human because
Well,
they
AI
also,
has no compassion.
right. AI has no anything. So
It's
if you,
gonna be neutral.
right, right.
That's how
So it is
important.
going to be critical, not
Right.
caring, which
Mhm.
is kind of what you want. Tell me what you're seeing in here because it might give you insights that maybe you hadn't noticed
Yeah.
before,
Yeah. Great.
but again, to practice and don't get frustrated
Yeah.
because that means you're being judgmental. Why am I not picking this up?
Mhm.
No, it's practice. Practice makes permanent. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Just do it, you
This
know?
is permanent.
Yep. It's the
That's
journey.
right. In the worlds I came from, it was practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And then you're like, oh gosh, here we go. No wonder I'm still trying to undo all this. Okay, so self-observation, number one. Number
Yeah.
two,
Number 2 is self-reflection. So
self-reflection.
now you turn the lens inward and you reflect on whatever information you've got, still trying to be critical, not caring as much as you can, because it is hard. It's not a one and done kind of thing. But,
Mhm.
reflect on it. Okay, my kid came home and I just screamed at him. And I don't really know why I did that. They really didn't have it coming. They left their shoes in the floor, but that wasn't worth what happened. So what happened? What happened before that brought that
Mhm.
on? What is it that triggered me? What really is it that's happening? You know, and you have to actually think about it. It's what with my clients I actually call micro meditations. I'm like,
Yeah.
take 10 seconds after that meeting. You're walking from that meeting to your office.
Yeah.
Take that time and actually think about it. Yeah, I really did yell at Bob. Why did I yell at Bob? Did I yell at Bob because I had a fight with my wife this morning? Did I
Mhm.
yell at Bob because he reminds me of my brother and I just wanted to punch him? Did I
Mhm.
yell at Bob because we got into it last week and I'm still not over it? What really happened? You know?
It's okay. So self-reflection also calls to mind the acronym HALT. Another thing that could be, am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, right? And it could be
Yeah.
other things, but it could also be something physical,
Yeah.
physiological, I guess, that's going on, or social as well. That we had a fight with my wife this morning or whatever, and that led over. Okay, so
Yeah.
great. So
Yep.
self-reflection, perfect. So
Yep.
we got self-observation, self-reflection. What is number three?
So now we're into self-awareness, which
Okay.
means now you are turning the lens outward and you're seeing what ripples you've created in the world because of this action.
Okay.
Well, gee, yeah, I screamed at Bob in the meeting, and now none of my team will talk to me. Nobody wants to discuss anything, and everybody's walking on eggshells.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I screamed at my kid, so they yelled back, slammed the door, and left. And now I don't know where they are. I'm sure they'll be back, but
Right.
so what are the ripples that you have sent out into the world with this? Because you may have to do a little bit of triage, you know,
Mhm.
because then the fourth step is self-compassion. So there's the
Mm,
action, you know.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I did blow up in that meeting. I shouldn't have blown up at that meeting. Yeah. But you know what? I'm a fairly new leader. I was a fantastic technician. I'm still learning how to be a leader. And I am not going to beat myself up about this, but I am going to learn. And I'm probably also going to apologize to Bob. And I'm probably also going to go talk to my team and just say, look, doing the best I can. I know I maybe didn't handle this in the best way, but let's see what we can do moving forward. You
So
know?
these four steps, self-observation, that just critical awareness, as neutral as possible.
Yeah.
Self-reflection, right? That's when you start thinking. Self-awareness, those ripples you've created outside, and then the self-compassion, right? So that compassion has to start with you. That self-compassion leads to those steps for reparation, those steps for understanding, those steps for change.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
And in this order, it makes complete sense. Where do most people jump in this cycle? Do they? When something happens, they scream at Bob. Do they hop in here anywhere? Or what happens for the majority of us?
A lot of us immediately jump to the action. We jump to the compassion, but we haven't actually taken the steps before to understand what happened and why. So we have no idea what compassion to actually use, which is why you end up with, well, let's all have a pizza party. compassionate action, probably the best of intentions, can
Yeah.
land really flat if your entire office is mad because you yelled at Bob,
Right.
you know,
Right.
that kind of thing. We
This is
have to do all 4 steps.
this is really impactful on a cultural level, like setting the weather, setting the climate in your organization, whatever that organization, in your home, whatever that is. This piece, because I've seen it, I've read it, I've heard it, I've experienced it, I'm sure I've done it time and again, right? The band-aid fix, the thing like the pizza party, or trying to change something where that underlying cause of whatever that if it's a culture that's not serving the organization or that outfit well, right, that underlying cause is never even surfaced, or certainly not addressed, and if it's not surfaced.
Yes. Yep. And if you haven't reflected on it, then you run the risk of doing it again and again.
And again.
Yes.
And again, and then other people see, and then that's how it gets embedded, because like, well, it worked well enough, and that person's a leader, so I guess I'm a leader. This is how I behave, and then it's just like this subconscious, just continuing a repetition of how things get embedded
Oh, yeah.
into the culture. So how do you do this with leaders when you're out there? You're working with a group. You're working with a group of leaders or a team of leaders. Like, what's a good way for people to recognize how they can employ this in their own life and remember to do so?
So you really have to take the time to sit down. I mean, I talk about the micro meditations as far as you can grab bits and pieces of it, but you
Uh-huh.
really have to think about it. And it doesn't have to take hours. I mean, it's not navel gazing, but you do need to sit down and kind of debrief yourself. This happened today. Well, what's the observation here? What is the self-reflection? Where do I go from here? Because the cool part is once you get those 4 steps
Yeah.
and you can do it for yourself, it's the
Mhm.
same 4 steps for empathy. You
Yeah.
observe, reflect on what you're seeing,
Mhm.
be aware of what the ripples are going out to the world, and then
Mhm.
enact compassion if it's needed. Compassion isn't always needed. Sometimes no action is necessary. But
Mhm.
if it is needed, that's where it goes. So once you can learn how to do it for yourself, you can start to bring it out for others.
That's great. I gotta ask.
Yeah.
Do you journal? And a lot of us in there. Do you
Yeah.
journal? Do you recommend people journal? This has come up in this podcast quite a bit already. The idea of journaling. I've started to do it in conjunction with future walking because of its impact.
Yeah.
But is this something like you recommend people do every night, only when there's an issue? How do you action journaling for this?
I recommend it as a daily thing. One of
Okay.
those things you do, either probably in the evening, because once you start thinking back, once you get better at it, you're going to start to see more situations. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
start to recognize, in not bothering to get a cup of coffee before I went to that meeting, that was not giving any kind of self empathy at all. And then I went to that meeting, I fell asleep, I missed half of what happened. Why didn't I get that cup of coffee? Well, because I felt I needed to go take care of this report first. But were you actually using self empathy? And in the end, how did that play out? Is
Mm-hmm.
this the results that you would have wanted? So you have to get your feedback one way or the other.
Okay.
Journaling is a good way to do it if you don't have someone to talk to. If you
Yeah.
have someone that you can actually, that will give you a straight answer. I mean, this can't be someone that's just going to tell you, yeah, boss, you're great.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be someone who will actually give you the straight answer. That's even better. And in fact, I noticed with one of your future walks, it's you do with a friend. That would
Mm-hmm.
be a perfect place to employ
Yeah.
something like that. If you both were talking about, these 4 steps and how they would work and be able to dissect some of this, because someone on the outside is going to see things that you're not going to notice on the inside, or, your point of view is different, or you're so used to doing it, you don't pay attention anymore.
Yeah.
So one way or the other, either a person needs to give feedback or journaling is a good one. And I would say again, that's a good place for AI as long as you're giving it the right cues.
Giving it the right cues and being really intentional about it. Yeah, I love that as a practice. I mean, we talked about future walking with someone else about something you're working towards. But you have to understand what's happening first. Journaling. I could see journaling working a couple different directions too. I could see, for me, I'm thinking like, I could write about the incident, whatever it is that stands out to me, and then work my way backwards, like try to follow that thread backwards.
Yeah.
Or could start with something just during the day or whatever, and then try to follow the ripples out to all the other things that might have impacted. And sometimes we'll talk about like micro stresses, right? These micro stresses. It's just these little things that, if we're unaware and are unchecked, can create a negative cascade, like a Jenga game. Little pieces get pulled out, but they don't just impact you. That's the ripples part of it. Is it can negatively impact others as well without even being aware. So I could see, like, for me, journaling either direction would help me get to some awareness.
Yeah. Well, and I actually suggest that they journal. It's journaling backwards and forwards. So you're
Yeah.
journaling forwards in that you might, today you might be like, oh boy, this happened. And you write down what happened and maybe you start to reflect on it, but you don't even see the ripples right away. This might
Yes.
be something that you're adding in ripples and doing the compassion step for some time. But you can
Mm-hmm.
also journal backwards in that, oh, look, here's Bob again. Oh, look,
Yeah.
I yelled at Bob here too. Well, look at this 2 years ago, Bob and I. What? Okay, there's something bigger and deeper here. What am I missing? So you're actually able to go up and down the timeline instead of just being stuck in this moment, which sometimes we do. Oh, this happened. This is awful. I hate this. I hate that I did this again. This is,
Yeah.
and you never quite see all of the repercussions so that you can add that compassion step.
Yeah, and I could see this being really helpful, excuse me, for habit change as well. But you've got another really good framework for that, the 5-hour reset. I love this one. Can we talk about that one a bit too?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
On habits, right?
Yes.
You want to explain, kind of through the five, what they are?
I'm going to be honest. Let's do one at a time. So,
One at a time.
because I've been working on other frameworks that are within my
Oh yeah,
methodology. So, you name it, and let's talk about it.
I've got it. Okay, so the first was recognizing your habits, including the one of self-judgment.
Yes. So there's that observation, actually seeing what's going on. And like for me with the self-empathy thing, it was
Mhm.
self-judgment. I was judging what had happened with that assault, and I was judging that I had done something to cause it.
Right.
And that was really hard. But I didn't recognize it right away because these mental scripts had just gotten so ingrained after being in that place for 6 years that
Mhm.
I didn't even realize it. So, being able to recognize what was actually going on was huge.
Yeah. Um, did you recognize that once you were away from it, or did you start to recognize it when you were still there?
I knew stuff wasn't right there
Uh-huh.
because I started drinking very heavily. I started doing things to numb myself.
Yeah.
And alcohol and food were, for me, those are big triggers.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew there was a symptom that something was wrong, but it really took me being out of it to be able to get a bird's eye view and say, "Oh, this is why I'm doing this. This is where this behavior is coming from."
Yeah, that's stepping away from something. Whether it's like, I mean, you moved, right? It was a full life change. You moved, and only with that full removal, it was something so traumatic and intense and long lasting,
Yeah.
that a full removal might be what someone needs. Other times, just stepping away, lifting for someone who's in an office all day. I mean, nothing nearly of that significance and import, but like just working hard all day, still have a cloudy vision. You lose clarity, you start to drift over time.
Yeah.
Even just stepping aside, that's one of the reasons I believe so much, because it's helped me so much. The future walk is just, even that stepping aside just on a regular daily basis can help provide some of that clarity.
Yeah.
But okay, so that was your first one, right?
Mhm.
Recognize the habits, including that habit of self judgment.
Yeah.
I am pretty good at self judgment. That's a pretty good habit for me.
Yeah. Me
What are
too.
you going through? So, number two is you redefine it, right?
Yeah.
You have grace for yourself, the same grace for yourself you'd have for someone else.
Yes. Yes. Because chances are, whatever habit you've put in place
Mhm.
is there to protect you. You put it there for a reason. So
Yeah.
you need to redefine what it is, because it's probably not negative, and that takes away the judgment.
Hmm.
You can't, like, for me, I was drinking a lot because I was trying to numb myself. I was trying to just get out of the situation. But rather than being mad at myself for what I was doing, I could redefine that really what I was doing was trying to protect myself, trying to take my brain out of what was going on long enough to stay sane, because what was going on mentally was really hard. And there were times that I just felt like I was breaking, and I didn't know what to do. So, by redefining that really what I was doing was trying to take care of myself. It
Yeah.
didn't work, but
Yeah.
it wasn't a mean, evil thing. It was that I really did have the best of intentions. It just didn't work out.
You were protecting yourself because
Yeah.
you were in an environment where others weren't doing that, right?
Right.
And so, yeah. Okay. So having that grace for yourself and then replacing your habits, right? You can't
Yes.
break habits, you have to replace them.
Yes. Yes. Habits are sneaky that way,
Yeah.
because there's if you're concentrating on breaking the habit, that means you're concentrating on that habit.
Hmm.
So that's what you're ingraining, is whatever that habit is. If you're seeking to replace that habit, now your concentration is on whatever it is you want to do that's different. So that's where your focus and your energy goes. So you really can't break a habit, you have to replace it.
And then you do that through practice, right? That's what reinforces your next R. It reinforces those new habits.
Yep, because
Yep.
practice makes permanent. Practice does
Right?
not make perfect, just like
No,
we
it does
said.
not. Practice makes permanent. And you're practicing something,
That's
right? So
right.
you might as well be practicing the things you want to be or have stay permanent within you, who you want to be.
Yes.
Practice that stuff.
Yes. And you have to. And I mean, you don't have to approach it like work. Practice doesn't mean work. Practice just means repetitions, which is
Yep.
why you want those repetitions to be good ones.
Make them good ones. I love that. Yep. And then revise, right? This is a cycle. This is never done. You're continuously thinking about is this, and this is how you put it, is this still what I want? Will these habits help me grow into who I want to be?
Yeah.
That's whoa, that one's so super powerful. That also ties to like kind of my longer vision future walk. Like who do I want to be? Like being really thoughtful about that. Even when something's working for you now, you still have to be paying attention to who you want to become.
Yes. And you have to actually think about it. You have to ask, who do I want to be? Because life is going to happen, but you get to choose who you want to be coming out of that.
Mhm.
Because if you don't choose, those choices will be made for you, and you may not get like what you get.
Right, right. Yeah, those choices will be made for you. I see this a lot, and that's an idea of drift. You just keep doing what has worked so far, or you keep doing what's worked for others that you maybe have a role model or mentor you, or you aspire to become like. So you see what they're doing, you keep doing it, or you follow a career path that someone sets out as saying this is how you should create a career and build a career. And you when you do that without that intention, sometimes you might look back some decades down the road at times back and be like, how in the world did I get here? Like,
Yeah.
who am I, right? Like, how did my life become this?
Yeah.
Um, well, sometimes it might be a joyful surprise, but most of the time I think it's not. I'm like, whoa, right? Maybe I achieved this thing. That's what my focus was on. Maybe career success, for example. But look at what's happened with these other parts of my life I haven't paid as much attention to. And so you end up you're practicing something. So be intentional about it and keep revisiting what those habits are.
Yes. Yep. And do it often, because you might
Mm-hmm.
want to make little tweaks, because it's just like how, you're navigating. If you make a little tweak and you make a little tweak and you little tweak, all of a sudden
Yeah.
10 years later, you're way off in another direction. Well, these
Yes.
habits are the same things. You
Right.
might want to make a little tweak, but you also might want to tweak it back. So,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, paying
And
attention.
having a trusted partner in that. I just remember one of my old bureau friends who's also a few years ahead of me at West Point, but he would call me. I was a new agent. Thank you, JB. I'll do a shout out for you. He would call me every now and again. He was in a different small office in our same state as me. And he would just I'd pick up the phone, old landline, and all I'd hear are these two words. He'd say, azimuth check. We do. I'm like, thank you. We do an azimuth check. Like, what a mentor, what a friend. Like, all right, I was new. I was absorbing. I was trying to figure it out. I was trying everything on and seeing what worked for me and watching different people. And he was just like that grounding voice of like azimuth check. And so and that still resonates so deeply with me. And having someone who can do that to help make sure you're headed where you want to be headed.
Yeah. Yeah. Be an accountability partner, for lack of a
Mhm.
better word. You
Yep.
said you wanted to do this. Is this really what you want to do? Do you
Yep.
want me to help you do this? Because I can
Yeah.
help you, but I don't have to.
Yeah.
There's empathy again. What's your perspective? Do you want compassion? Do
Mhm.
you want my help? Or do you just want me to witness what you're saying and what you're doing and just, go along with it? That's up to you. But
Mhm.
compassion might not be, maybe you don't even need any action there. Maybe you just need to be there.
Yeah. Okay, that's a really great point you brought up for anyone in a conversation. I know as a coach, it probably happens to you, it happens to me. Like the whole idea of treating others like we want to be treated, but
Yeah.
maybe not. Maybe they don't want someone to give them ideas or reflection or feedback. Maybe they just want to say something out loud, put it out there, see how it sounds, and have just someone who can hold that space for them.
Yeah.
That's like, as a coach, do you set that framework, or as a leader, do you set that with someone else initially? Like, hey, what do you want from me? What do you need from me?
Yeah. No, it's called the platinum rule. Because the
Yeah.
golden rule is do unto others as you would have done. The
Uh-huh.
platinum rule is do unto others as they would have done.
Yes.
So and sometimes, yeah, I mean, I'm the coach. I'm the one who's supposed to lead to a certain degree, but I'm
Mhm.
also constantly checking in. Is this helping you? Is this what you meant? Is this getting us to your goal? Help me help you. And the way to do that is to ask. That's the other thing. People are like, well, how do I know what their perspective is? And it's like, did you ask?
Right.
Did you
Right.
ask? Ask them. Start a
That's
conversation. Verbally say, is this what you want?
right. That's great. Set that as at the start, and then I end every coaching conversation I have with someone, like in that formal role. I should probably do this in other parts of my life too. But I'm like, two things, right? One, like, what did you learn? One thing, what did you learn about yourself? But also, how am I serving and helping you? Like, what can I do differently? What can I do better?
Right.
And because you need it models, right? It models vulnerability, it models openness and growth and all that. But also, that's the only way we can course correct. If maybe am engaging with one person I'm working with the same as I am someone else, but it's not really what that person needs, right? It's sometimes the only way that can come up, or it's a really good time for that to come up to create that formal time there in a session.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's just like you said, without it, not only am I unable to serve that person better, but I want to get better. I want to be a better coach. I want to be able to be more effective. And that's how I learn. So it's a win win.
I love that. All right, I want to get to empathy opportunities, as you've put
Yes.
it. I would love to kind of go through these different opportunities we have during the day for empathy. And I don't want to be a spoiler alert, because I do. People, you need to watch her TEDx talk. It's fantastic. Please do. So I don't want to spoil it, so you don't have to give the whole thing. But I would love to talk about those opportunities for empathy during the day. However much you want to reveal of that.
Sure. Yeah. No, research has shown that there's 7 to 9 opportunities to actually use empathy during the day. So as you're out in public, as you're out and about, as you're doing things, you might be surprised at where and when these things pop up for you to be able to take perspective. It's funny because in working on my dissertation, one of my questions for my interviewees were give me an example of how you would use empathy out in the world. And like 60% of them gave an example at the grocery store. I don't know why. It just maybe because it's someplace we all have to go, but you
Yeah.
know, so just even in the parking lot at the Walmart or whatever, you never know. But the point is that, okay, yeah, I can see how I could do it for this person or my kid or my employees or my partner, but how many of those were for yourself?
It's like a whoa.
Yeah.
I know. When you shared that part, I was like, oh man, did I listen to anything she said? Because it's like, yeah, it's habits, it's ingrained. I was like, yes, myself. But that's like a golly, yeah, we got to show the same thing for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to. If you
Absolutely.
don't for yourself, you don't stand a chance of showing it for anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. 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 It's got to start with yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if someone is like right now they're listening, like, all right, yeah, I'm really good at this habit of self-judgment and lack of self-compassion. And maybe I recognize it is spilling over into some other relationships. And I've always thought they were the problem, but maybe I want to look inward. What is a thing that person can even start to do today to course correct a bit?
Start with trying to eliminate that judgment, whether it's for yourself or for the other person. And when it doesn't come easily the first or the second or the 100th time,
Hmm.
keep doing it. Because one thing we do by eliminating that judgment is we
Hmm.
start to pull in that cognitive empathy piece. I mean, when I talk about being critical, not caring, and self observation, that's really what I want people to do. I want you to look at these things with your brain and not with your heart, which is why what I say is you need to keep a cool head and a warm heart. So if you can
Mm.
approach those kind of situations with both, you need both a cool head and a warm heart. It's a good way to start with your observation and maybe understanding what's actually going on underneath.
There's a that's great. That brings to mind a whack-a-mole. So, so again, another thing I've learned and used before is phrasing like "that's not true because," "that's not true because," "that's not true because," and just repeating every time something creeps in, whatever your phrase is, right? Like, that's if I'm beating myself up about something, that's and I catch myself. Number one, you got to catch yourself. Once you catch yourself, like that's not true because you kind of whack a mole and push it down and push it down and push it down. Um, Not to be brutal, but just like I think that visualization sticks a little bit with people.
Yeah.
Is like that's not true because that's not true because that's, and then over time, that's the repetition piece, right? Over time, that starts changing. Like that's how your brain starts to learn to think about things a different way. And
Yes.
it can change how you start to view your own thoughts. And when you replace whatever you thought before with that's not true because this, that's the replacement piece that your brain just starts to put in there. And that's how your thoughts can change. And it can apply to yourself, can apply to others, can apply to our unconscious biases. I mean, all sorts of different things.
Yeah. One thing that I've used, I don't know that there's any research backing this up, but it's
Uh-huh.
worked for me, is this idea that the first thought you have is what you've been socialized with. It's what society wants you to think. It's what you've had the repetition. Maybe you've heard from your parents, whatever. But the second thought is yours. So, like, if you think a thought and your second thought is that's not true because you're getting rid of that conditioning, you're getting rid of that
Yeah.
societal conditioning. And that's actually really worked for me a lot because sometimes I'll have these thoughts and I'll just be like, that's terrible. Why would I even think that? Well, the first
Mhm.
thought was the terrible one. The second one was, that's not me. I don't,
Yeah.
that's conditioning. That's society. That's not mine.
Right.
So it's a little easier to be less judgmental when you can kind of separate yourself out from it and go, yeah, that wasn't mine. That's how I've been trained, but it's not
Right.
mine.
I think it's a great framework and strategy for removing yourself from that judgment.
Mhm.
That's really, really good. Thank you. All right. So that's the one thing. Okay. In addition to finishing up your dissertation to get your second doctorate, what else are you working on right now that you're excited about? You're like, yeah, right. I'm like really happy when I get to bed by whatever time I wake up in the morning for the new day. That's all
I
I got time
am. I am.
for.
So there's that. And that one, I mean, August is going to be here before I know it. So I'm really putting on the gas with that.
Yeah.
But next week I'm speaking at Harvard with a speakers bureau. So I'm really excited about that and working on those talks and
All right.
sweating that.
Oh man, you're gonna be brilliant. You are
Yeah,
brilliant. It'll be amazing. Oh my
thank
goodness.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Can you? Well, by the time this comes out, you'll have done that already. Can you share? Is it pretty much in line with what we've talked about today?
It is. It's kind of an extension on that, though. I'm really drilling in on boundaries, what they are, why they're important, how you set them, how they go from being healthy to unhealthy, that sort of thing. Because without good boundaries, you can't have empathy. You've got to be able to take care of yourself. But it also means having boundaries and not barriers. And that's the difference between being healthy and being unhealthy.
Yeah.
So that's really what I'm talking about next week, because it's one of those things that keeps coming up with empathy, that people either lack barriers and so they end up kind of being a pushover, which gives empathy a bad name, even though it's not empathy, it's a lack of boundaries, or they end up putting up barriers that are so high that nobody can get through, and that's unhealthy. They're both unhealthy. So it's like, okay, here's what they are. This is how you put them in place. These are your 3 steps to make sure that they're going to work and what you need to do. So yeah, that's where I'm going with that one.
Well, that's really, really interesting. Yes, well, we need to come back and, when you're done, talk about boundaries next, because, well, they're a big source of violating your own boundaries, whether you state them or not, whether you even recognize you have them. We've got them. When you violate your own, oh my gosh, that's a big source of unwellness and stress in people too. So,
well, I would love to.
And yourself. Maybe a boundary could be like creating a boundary of those negative things you say to yourself, that judgment, that self-judgment. That could be a healthy boundary to put into place. You can whack-a-mole it.
Absolutely. Well, step 3 is that you have to have a consequence.
Yes.
It's not enough. A boundary without a consequence is just a suggestion, and not everybody is going to respect that. So you create an if-then statement. If this happens, then I will do that. If you yell at me in a meeting, then I will walk out, and I will do it every time. So it has to be something that you're willing to do. So with your self-judgment thoughts, if I have this thought of self-judgment, then I will negate it with, that's not true because. So yeah, that's like right on.
So good. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Melissa. I am so grateful for you, for your time, for being here, for sharing just an inch of your mile deepness or mile wideness. I don't know, probably, but with you both, certainly mile deep, mile wide, your greatness with us. Just sharing some really valuable tools, strategies, steps we can take, starting with the idea that self-empathy is essential, and it's so, so, so important as a leader, as a human, in all our relationships. Because that leads to self-compassion, and that is the key to compassion for others as well. So thank you for these amazing frameworks you've outlined towards building this. And thank you for this work you continue to do. And really excited to learn, more from you. And as I'm sure our listeners are, so you're eqviaempathy.com. Is that still correct? Okay.
Yep.
EQ via, when I saw that initially, I'm like, Ecovia empathy. Am I
That's
so
okay.
that's on me.
Yeah.
eqviaempathy.com. And please, please, please do check out her TEDx talk, Shattering Shame with Self-Empathy. It is so well done. And it just resonated a lot with me for that step of self-compassion, and her book and podcast, The Empathic Leader. So thank you again. If you are finding value in our podcast, please follow so you don't miss any future episodes, and leave a comment about what resonated most from our conversation with Melissa today. This week, ask if you're including yourself in those 7 to 9 opportunities you have each day to show empathy, and what would change? Ask yourself what would change if you extended to yourself the same grace you give to others. You can take a future walk while thinking about those questions and see what becomes clear. Thanks for joining me on the Future Walk podcast. And remember, practice those R's, practice the self-observation, self-reflection, self-awareness, and self-compassion. Choosing empathy will help you lead to the action of compassion. And until next time, enjoy your walk.